This is a new moon where you can be connected to the information that's really important for your future. So it is really a time to pay attention to both your inner knowing and what you're hearing and seeing around the world. Hi, this is Denise Matthew. I hope you're doing well. I'm back again to talk about the new moon happening, and that's going to be happening on February 9th, 2024, and it's going to be happening at 20 degrees Aquarius. So this is the first new moon we're going to have with Pluto in Aquarius, so it'll be interesting to see if it's even more impactful. Overall, this new moon is very heavy on second line energy. So if you have a second line in your profile, this can be even more impactful, but we all can get some sort of a call about something that we need to do in our lives. So it is a lot of sort of working with your own energy, being in your own space. And then, somebody calls you up and says, okay, do you want to work on this project? So that's kind of nice in that you do have that space to not really worry if you're missing out on anything, because the call will come when the timing is right. Now, whether or not that call is correct for you is totally up to you to decide if it is or not. With a lot of projection in play, it means that we may not exactly see what the truth is. And that's something to keep in mind. Projection is not always seeing things as they are, but we're seeing them as we like them to be. The other thing about the second line is it is connected to talent. So it could be about you being recognized for your talent. And from my perspective, 2024 is really connected to this idea of talent, being seen for your talent, and both logical and also individual talent. So it is a time to be recognized. And I think that if you look at the nodal cycle, the gate 42 and the 32 that we had sort of in the beginning of the year until the 8th of January, it sort of really does talk about the idea of we're closing a cycle. So maybe a lot of people who were talents or, known talents, or people who did something their whole life and maybe they were experts in their field, they're sort of moving out of their field, and they're sort of making room for other people to come in. So I feel like this year ahead, and of course with this new moon, we might start to see a lot of people showing up that we've never seen before. Someone coming up in the ranks, becoming seen for their talent. But of course, it is usually something that they sort of been working on for a long time. Or alternatively, with Uranus moving into the gate 8 or later in the year, this could be about individual talent, which always comes from this idea of it is your uniqueness, your creative expression, and really about being your authentic self. And because you are your authentic self, you're different in some way. With individual talent, it is never about being the best. It is always about being your authentic self. So that seems to be an overarching theme within this energy. And maybe it is to start kicking off this idea of being called out for your talent or being seen for something that you can do. Again, with the second line, sometimes you may not have developed this talent. Maybe this is a call you're going to receive to develop something that you may naturally be good at, that you're starting to think, okay, well, maybe I should develop this. Maybe I didn't know about it, or maybe I kind of had an idea about it. Other people are bringing my awareness to it. So maybe there's some potential for this. The other perspective is that we have a global definition with this new moon, which I think in a lot of ways makes it even more impactful. Whenever we have global definition with a new moon or a full moon or an eclipse or something like that, it almost makes it a little bit more impactful. This comes in with head and ajna global definition, which means that we will all be experiencing that energy, and we'll all experience it in our own way. If you have an open head and ajna, as most people do, like 70% of people have an open head and ajna, this may be more impactful. It may mean that you're getting lost in your thoughts. It may mean that you're trying to figure out the unknowable. There could be a lot more questions about, why things are the way they are. And this is about not knowing and then eventually knowing. And that's the whole thing about this. It's individual energy. The 6124 is activated by both Jupiter and also Venus. And it is bringing this energy of kind of not knowing and then suddenly knowing. Now, with Jupiter and Venus in this energy, bringing this global definition, these are two benefics. So this kind of gives this idea that it is beneficial information that you will receive. It could be related to relationships, abundance. It could be related to your spirituality. It could be related to your higher education, studying that you're doing. You're getting some information or some downloads that is kind of directing you or giving you some inner knowing on where you're going to go, where you're going to put your energy. It could even be finding out about hidden information from your workplace or something like that. So it is a time when you can be connecting with new information or hidden information. The gate 61 just on its own only brings this pressure to know, the pressure to know the unknowable. those questions that kind of spin around in your head and you really never get an answer until suddenly it kind of comes in an aha moment and you get sort of a feeling of, oh, yeah, finally, I've got that answer to that question. And again, with the gate 61, some questions are not ever going to be answered. So if we look at the sun and the moon, they are in the gate 49 line 2. And this is, in my opinion, a hot spot because Saturn was transiting in the gate 49 off and on in 2022. So this almost seems like it's potentially going to activate that energy, the gate 49 line 2. The actual dates when Saturn was in this energy was March 10th to 18th, 2022, August 30th to September 13th, 2022, and finally November 30th to December 13th, 2022. So those are dates that something might have been happening in your life, and it could be related to this idea of coming to a turning point and deciding that you can't go on the same way you've always been going on. You have to shift something up in your life. So with the sun and the moon in the gate 49 line 2, it is bringing up the theme of potentially relationships. It is tribal energy, so it is connected to some sort of a relationship, and it doesn't always have to be just romantic. So in other words, you may not feel that you've been supported enough in your relationship. It could be you're not supported enough in your work. You're not supported enough in a way where you're feeling that you get what you need. And that's where we have this revolution where, okay, it can't be the way it always has been, because tribal energy is truly about support given and support received. And if that is a missing ingredient, things will usually start to fall apart. Changes need to be made if you're going to continue forward. Now, you might have thought about these changes, but this is almost bringing it back up to look at again and say, okay, what changes do you need to make within this relationship, that you're looking at your relationship and you're saying that I can't do this anymore. It's not correct for me. It doesn't feel like I'm being served and I need to change something. So this could be where you're unilaterally deciding what's going to happen in a relationship, how it's going to go in the future. But in reality, we know that relationships are two-way streets. So it is important to take somebody else's views, ideas, and their information into consideration when you're making changes going into the future. If you had a job and your boss comes in and just basically changes everything and says, well, this is what's going to be the new rules and you have to follow them. You are going to be way more receptive if you are given sort of some advance warning. Your boss says, well, we're thinking about making these changes. What do you think about them? They get input and they sort of work with what both of you want and come to a middle space where the changes are still occurring, but you're sort of happier with the changes because you feel as though you've had some input. So this is the key here. But again, with the gate 49, it's easy to go over the top. It's easy to push your agenda. It's easy to kind of steamroll through in the long run. That is not going to serve you. It's not going to serve your relationship. So if you can press the brake until you sort of feel like you can come up with something that is negotiable between you and your relationship, it definitely can serve you well. From a global perspective, this is called the last resort. This is basically where we've tried everything we can to make things better, to have a peaceful solution, and yet it continues to be the same as it always was. And this is where we say, okay, we're going to revolt, we're going to move forward, and we're going to make the changes. So this again is the same kind of theme where the powers that be come in and say, we're making sweeping changes and we're not asking for your input. Again, with tribal energy, that can be the way it is, because it is usually this support given to a leader as long as you're supportive. But having said that, we know that that is generally not going to work really well when, any governments or any kind of leaders come in and make sweeping changes and they don't allow the people to have an input into it. So this is where we might see some pushing of the agenda where the leaders are saying, we're going to make these changes. So this might be something that we see in a global perspective where we see that the people are starting to revolt. So if we look at the Earth in the gate 4 line 2, this is being called for revolutionary answers to the issues that we're having with support. Again, coming up with the right solutions, the right answers that are going to serve you. So if we move back to the gate 49, where we're talking about this idea of wanting to make changes, saying, I've come to the end of my rope here, I need to make changes. What this is saying is timing is key. Again, if you want changes to be made in a way that where you feel that they're going to be better in the long run, Having the right timing for the new way of being is very key. So if we look at the timing of an answer, if you're sort of in a class and the teacher asks you a question and you don't answer it right away, and then the class moves on, and then, about a half hour later, you answer the question that they talked about a half hour before, well, it's not going to have the impact it would have if you had have answered it at the correct time. Having the answers being implemented at the right time will give you the best results. So if we add in that both Pluto and Mars and the gate 60, this is really amping up this feeling of limitation, which is once again making this idea of revolutionary ideas or revolutionary times become more of a theme, where we've hit sort of that brick wall where we can't go any further. And now it's about, now I need to have some release. I need some freedom. I need to have the pressure released. Because if you look at it, we have the gate 60 is being activated by Pluto and Mars. And we also have the pressure center of the gate 61 being activated. So we have two pressure centers being activated for this new moon, which really does amp up the energy to say, okay, enough already. We need to have changes. We need to have shifts. Overall, this new moon really does talk about new changes. And when we talk about a new moon, we know that it's sort of in its infancy. So this is where you're bringing in changes that are going to be beneficial for your long-term goals. And ultimately, there might be some decisions that are hard decisions to make in your relationships, especially, but they are ones that in the long run, if implemented now, can really reap benefits for you in the future. That's the energy for the new moon. I hope you have a wonderful new moon. Until next time, take care and bye for now.